Record. We're recording, I think. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome. How was week 1? You all did amazing. What'd you think? What were the thoughts? How'd it go?
It went really well. Oh.
Yeah. No, I think it went well too. I was going to say the exact same thing. So.
Yeah.
What was like your favorite thing that happened and your least favorite thing?
My least favorite was probably all the troubles I ran into, at least on my end, because I couldn't run it and I was just roadblock after roadblock. But Lauren was a great help, and we were able to fix all the issues. And now I can run production. It's all good.
Awesome. What the rest of you
I
think?
think it was really nice working with Jennifer. She is like a wealth of information. Like I really enjoyed working with her, and she taught me a lot. So yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Great.
My favorite part was pairing. So least favorite part, production still doesn't work for some reason, even though it works locally. But we'll figure it out.
We'll just demo on local for now.
Yeah.
While we figure that out. Cool. Okay. Well, with that being said, let's jump into demos. Since John's gone, the other pair can start.
Okay.
Great. Let's see. So I can go ahead, since we're going to demo on local, let me go ahead and share my screen.
Perfect.
Yes, Jennifer is gonna drive and I'm gonna talk because I had so many issues with Node and things like that on my computer, so I'm still working on that. But yeah, she's gonna share her screen.
Do you see my screen? Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so our issue was to read and write to Firebase. And Firebase was new to both of us actually, but the documentation was like really helpful. I think that was probably what kind of got us through the week with all of the different sections in it and stuff was really helpful. So what we came up with really was just a button that was clickable, and it displayed the date and time of when the button was clicked. As well as that, it's stored in the Firebase store. And it's the last 3 clicks. So yeah, the only thing is, yeah, as mentioned, when we pulled the code over, it failed, the Netlify failed, so we're just trying to still figure that one out. But the button was basically to symbolize adding an item or a shopping list. And I think the kind of main thing, which you'll see in the code later, is when it's not clicked, nothing happens, and when it's clicked, basically.
So as a quick demo, if you click the button, a new item pops up in Firestore. And then if you refresh the page, it also gets re-rendered on here as well.
Yeah.
That looks great.
Good job.
Thanks.
I bet it must have felt really good to click it on the app and then see it actually in Firebase update.
And I was like,
that's always a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Firebase was really new, but it's a very interesting thing and definitely something I'll use in the future. Do you have anything else to say, Jen, or do you want to go to the code? Or
I think we can go to code unless anyone has any questions so far.
No, great.
Yeah, I just want to say that the fact that you all mentioned that, the documentation was helpful and you learned a lot from that. Like, that is such a good skill to have, is to be able to, get good at reading documentation and be able to just have those docs open anytime you need them and pretty much have it be able to solve any problem you need is such a good skill to have as an engineer. So I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say Jen's language and knowledge of this area is was high above mine. So it was really nice just like throwing ideas at each other and just being like, oh, is this necessary? And her telling me, yeah, it is necessary for this part and stuff like that. So I learned a lot in that regard. So yeah, if you want to just have a look at the code, basically we created a React page component and utilized use state. You just see it up there where her screen or her mouse is. And then we just created 2 const, one for the database value, which is Firestore, and then one for collections. And then Inside collections was clicks, because that's what we're trying to investigate, I guess, is clicks.
If
And
you look at Firebase, it's the name of the collection. So,
and then used an on-click handler, passed it through an event, set up a default. Remind me again what the default is, Jen, sorry.
So we just did event prevent default because otherwise it'll automatically refresh the page or try to go wherever the hyperlink is. So we prevent that so it doesn't go anywhere. Although I guess to auto refresh, I could make it just go back to the same page. That would have been a good hack, but I didn't think of it at the time. Anyways.
And then we set up a timestamp. So just converting it into a Firebase timestamp, sorry. So that each time it's clicked, a new date and time. Well, it's going to be the same date, but new time is created. Then we called clicks. What did you call these? Object payload, phrase I've never heard before. Sorry, it's all very new to me. So she just said that before we met. And then, yeah, this was very new to me as well. Really interesting. I read up on it quite a bit. Was promises, not something I had come across before. React is quite new to me. So that was just interesting that we were saying console log that it was successfully written, just to like clarify that we had done the right thing. And then also catch clause to log any of the API errors. Another area that was quite useful. I think this came up yesterday. Sorry, I wasn't in the conversation. I was out yesterday afternoon, but use effect. So this, I think, originally wasn't in our project, and I think Joey mentioned this. So just the idea of click referencing and ordering by date time, limiting to 5. What else was it? So moving the read from the database and ordering the date and time. We originally used .map. Instead, we discovered that an empty array was right. Can you explain that again, Jen? Sorry.
So for some reason, when the promise is resolved and we get a response, you're not able to map over the response, but you can do a for each over the response. And so that's why we actually ended up just pushing to a new clicks array with the different document data. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I think maybe it's just because it's like a large JSON, or I actually have no idea. We tried logging what query snapshot was, and it looked like it was a giant object. Mm-hmm. So I guess I didn't realize for each also works on objects. Mm-hmm. So that's probably why, because map only works on arrays. So then we went ahead and used the Firebase data function, because it returned such a large object when we were originally just logging the response. It was so big, we couldn't actually find the data. And then we realized Firestore uses this data function to actually grab the data out for you, which is nice. And then you just push it into our clicks array. Yep. And then can you continue?
Yeah, so just set click log, just setting up the local state and feeding the clicks into the array. What else? Oh yeah, so the empty array is, I think I kind of mentioned, as Jen said, just that the use effect will keep running unless you create the empty array, and then just returned exactly what we wanted basically. So we wanted it to click, we wanted it to go to Firebase. This is another area, the question mark, there's a ternary operator. It's like truthy or falsy in JavaScript. That was another new thing for me, which was really interesting, because I remember using truthy and falsy that I hadn't seen in the question mark. And just printing the H2 key ID, I suppose it was just our ID was coming from the H2, and then button was clicked at this date and this time, otherwise it wasn't clicked. So yeah, that was kind of it. Do you have anything to add, Jen?
Nope. Any questions?
I just have a question about use effect. Like, I kind of get it, but what is it exactly? Maybe I'm like.
So yeah. From my understanding, use effect happens after the render. And so after it just renders everything. What it'll do, it'll then run all the things that are in in UseEffect. I think it's like it's an update on component did mount or something like that. It's like a combination of that and something else. And so so that's why you need like a default value here. Otherwise it'll continually re-render like tens of thousands of times in like a few minutes. And so that's why we were getting the overload error yesterday. And so that's why this guy is really important. Although it also, if you run it though, it also keeps throwing this warning that it has missing dependency clicksref, because clicksref is not actually defined in UseEffect. I guess I could move it down there, but we use it in other places in the code. So that's just like a warning you get for UseEffect too. But yeah, does that explain it?
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I posted some documentation too in the Zoom chat for hooks and UseEffect. But yeah, Jennifer, you're pretty much spot on. It's whenever we had like class components instead of functional components, you know, we had component did mount, component did update, all these lifecycle methods. When we're moving to functional components, what we're using, UseEffect kind of is a all-in-one approach to do component did mount, component did update, and other various lifecycle methods. So the documentation is super helpful, and I highly recommend it.
Any other questions?
This looks great.
Good job, y'all.
Yeah, this was really great. One thing that I noticed like after this walkthrough is this might be like when we're developing on these stories, we should really try and like read the story and do the bare minimum to like meet all of those acceptance criteria. There's like a lot going on here and it's really beautiful and it's going to play out really well going forward. But just to kind of like focus you and save you a little more time, just always trying to be really tied to those acceptance criteria so that you can make sure you're like kind of doing the bare minimum, which sounds weird to say, but
Yeah.
because you don't want to like build a bunch of stuff that you end up having to scrap, because that's like I wasted so much time doing this. But this looks beautiful and it's wonderful work and great job here. Excellent work. Any other questions? Are we ready to move on to the next pair? Anybody else have anything on this? Andrew, Lauren, anybody?
I was impressed with how quickly you got to the quota, like exceeding the quota. Fastest cohort yet.
Yeah, I was surprised as well.
So this happens every cohort?
Every single cohort has done this, yeah.
That's amazing. That's so great.
And we've kind of like, you know, we could try to guard against it, but we also like, I don't know, it's pretty realistic. Like everyone breaks production at some point, so let's just get it over with, right?
Yeah, totally. Get it done early.
Yeah, this is we've kind of come to find that this could be a really great experience for you to talk about like in interviews or something where they're like, what's something that's gone really wrong and how did you like fix it or something. Usually this issue is hit like about halfway through the project. So we were like, wow, this happened quick, but it's fun. It's a good experience and it's like a safe space to experience something like this. So it's all good. All right, with that, on to the next group.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Now I'm unmuted. I'm just trying to get things pulled up here again after I had to reboot. Give me 1 second. And all right, so then I'll go ahead and just share my desktop with, actually, Diana, we're going to start off with the production code, right? Or the production site?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to show.
Cool. Swear I'm almost there. All right, here we go. Or not.
No.
Interesting. Not that one.
Cool.
Are you guys actually seeing me
Yeah.
move over?
Yeah.
You are?
Well, like we see the app right now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, cool then. We're good then.
Yeah.
All right, so Dan?
Cool. So we had to create a, well, basically we created tabs to switch the the view into 2 pages. So when we click on shopping list, the main view will pull up a page that we created called shopping list, and you can see it in the URL. It's switched over, and then when you click on add item, it also changes to the add item page. So to do this, we used React Router DOM. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
React Router DOM. But that is basically the demo part of it. You click buttons and pages change.
Yep. From
Can I
shopping
ask
list?
if you use the back button in the browser? Does it work correctly?
Oh, that's a good question.
Back button.
It does.
It does. Yeah.
Nice.
Although the state of the buttons doesn't update when you use the back button.
Oh. Oh, that's true. Huh.
That's
Yes. So when that's right. So then when we're actually switching, and then it says shopping list up here,
Yeah.
shopping list isn't changing right down here as well.
This is
I
a
didn't
really
even think about that.
for one of you to create a bug report in our GitHub repo, which is
Mhm.
another fabulous skill for you to have as a developer. So if one of you wants to do that for this issue, that would be amazing.
Sure, we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I guess do we go over to our code?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Give me 1 sec. Maybe.
So for the bug, I just create a whole new bug for this, or do I attach it to the?
Just create a whole new one. Just go into the GitHub repo, click issue, and new issue. And there you'll describe what it is and take some screenshots to explain it.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
All right. So, well, the first thing we should have done was create our git ignore. This wasn't part of the ACs, but yeah, we should have created our git ignore and put all of our node modules in there before we pushed our first commit. So just to keep that in mind for next time. So the first thing we did was, npm install React Router DOM. It added it to our package JSON. And then we created a pages folder and a components folder, and then eventually a CSS folder, but basically just to make it more specific so that for the future of our remote team, so that we can update them without conflicting with each other. So we created 2 pages, one for the shopping list and one for the add item. At the beginning, we had put the React Router DOM in the pages, I believe, and then we realized that when you clicked on the button, it wouldn't necessarily change it in the whole app. So we had to move it to the index so that it applied to all of our app. And we also added it to app.js, and we removed them from the pages and the components. But yeah, basically this is our app. We imported our components, our pages, and then just used the switch to create the routes, to switch between the 2 routes that we created for the pages. Yeah, I don't know if I have to go more in detail. I don't know. Questions?
I guess we could delete browser router up here since it's not being used in here.
Yeah.
I just noticed that. So,
yeah.
So we'll do that.
Cool. But yeah, easy peasy.
Anybody have thoughts, questions on this one? Questions on how it works or how it's all kind of tied together?
Just when you just pointed out that browser router isn't necessary in this file. So you can look too in the console that it will give you lots of warnings, like the app's not going to fail, but
that's why I put it in there in the first place. Yeah.
Right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
It can give you good information, like, oh yeah, I don't need to put that in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, the reason I put browser router in there, that's probably a holdover from our app.js, is because when you run it in the console, when you start up your environment, your Node environment, it actually gives you a warning saying it's not wrapped in a browser router. And so I just threw it in there to make it happy. But we don't actually need it, so.
Isn't browser router what gives us like good access to the history stack? Like if you put browser router in there, I wonder if it would solve that bug with like the switching back and forth. Like
yeah, because it gives you a warning saying the switch should be in the browser router. So that's why I had originally put that in there. But when I merged the two app.js's, I think I forgot to rewrap it, and so maybe that's why.
That makes sense.
Okay.
On that, that seems like something that could be kind of important. Do you guys want to go ahead and like wrap that up and try and get that back in there?
Like add browser router into the 2 pages?
So it sounds like what the arrow was saying, and I haven't seen it, so I don't know, is that like you need to wrap that, you need to browser router. So on line, let's see,
like line 15, you need to put in you need to wrap the browser router around switch.
Exactly.
Basically.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So
you could replace that div at line 12 with a browser router if you want.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's true.
Yeah.
So just replace this div, and this is going to be on master. So is that going to be okay?
You want to I would create a branch for it, a feature branch for it.
Okay.
Back to your previous one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, just create a new branch for it. You could even create that bug report and then put this detail in the comments. This is just like a really good example of something you can do for like kind of like your portfolio or like resume package. It's like I created this bug, I put information in the comments about how we could fix it, created a feature branch, fixed it, deployed it, and it's like a full circle. Here's where I saw a problem in an app and fixed it, sort of thing.
Gotcha. Okay,
Cool.
We can do that.
Great work.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Yeah, good job. That's awesome.
So just stop share.
Footer tab too?
If you can stop.
What's that?
Are we going to look at footer tabs too? That code?
Right there.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah, so these are the 2 buttons in the footer tabs, each leading to its respective pages. You click to it. And also we imported the CSS folder specifically for the footer tabs. And yeah, we use the semantics of nav, and we in the app we also use the semantic of footer because we remembered about them. And it's a good time to practice.
We sure did.
Can you go back to that component real quick, or that file, footer to
Yes.
Footer tabs?
This one.
Can you tell me more about why you chose this name for the function?
Because, well, we knew that it had to be stuck to the bottom or fixed to the bottom, which for us meant it was the footer. And then because they were tabs, there wasn't a lot of, yeah, sorry.
I think what Stacy's referring to is the function name on line 7.
Oh, we didn't even change that, did we?
Yeah, no.
So when you're importing this in the actual app JS file,
yeah,
is it importing app again? Will you pop over to the app JS file? I'm just curious to see what's going on over there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because we're exporting it as What is the default
Being
export?
exported as the default. So you can have named exports. You can have multiple exports in a file, but this is it's just taking this function and just making that the default export. So you can name it whatever you want when you're importing it, but it's a little more common practice to actually name your exports, right? So instead of just relying on the default, because if you later wanted to have multiple or something, you have to then refactor.
Cool. So that'll be something
Oh, I
that
see.
you'll want to like fix up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I had a question about that actually. So in our, if you go into the library, the lib folder and open the Firebase .js. So one thing I did is I export default FB, and when there was no default there because there was like in curly braces, how do you actually, I couldn't actually get it to correctly import, and it kept throwing an error when I would spin it up. So I just threw in default in there just for the time being so it would like import correctly. But what's the proper way of doing that if there's like multiple exports and there's no default?
Sure, if it's a named export, like if this had been in curly braces, when you import it, it needs to be in curly braces as well. And I'm not sure if you tried that or not, but.
Yeah, I tried that, but maybe I might have thrown something else in there, so it gave me an error. So, okay, I'll try that next time. I can also change that back later, so, okay. It's good to know.
Cool. Great work, everyone. Such good questions.
Yay.
So much learning.
That's a good first one.
Cool. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, you can stop your screen share. Again, amazing work. So proud of you all. Yay. Okay.
Nice work.
Anybody have any thoughts about demos before we move on? Questions, thoughts? These were great demos. You guys did a brilliant job of showing us the feature and then walking through the code. That was super helpful. Nope. Okay. Well, with that, we'll move on to Joey's going to do a learning module for us on code reviews.
Yes. All right. So let me share my screen and we can get started. Slide. Let me just get rid of this real quick. Alrighty. So let's talk about code reviews. So there's kind of three things we want to go over for code review. They're super important part of the development process, and let's kind of dive into it. So the first question is, what is a code review? You all have already done one, so you guys have experience with this. But it's just a conversation about a set of changes for a feature going into production. So we can think of code review as a process that we want to have between developers, product even, or designers to ensure that what's going into production meets our acceptance criteria, follows some good practices, and just improves the code quality overall. So that process, you all have already done it. You submit a pull request. There's a conversation going on between the reviewers and the submitter. If any changes need to happen, those changes happen to the branch that's being reviewed. And it's just a cycle. So this process keeps repeating until all parties are satisfied. And once they're satisfied, that's kind of when we go into production. And on the whole process of actually doing a code review, I find it very helpful, even when I'm like pairing with someone on like a feature, to do code reviews solo. It gives me more time to actually take the time that I need to understand what's going on with the code. If I see something that I haven't seen before, I like to look up documentation of it and just learn kind of what they're doing and how they're using this new library maybe. And it just gives me time, to be by myself and kind of take it in as I need to. So why do we even do these code reviews? There are a few things that they're good for. One of them, sharing knowledge. So if I'm a reviewer for a pull request and I see something totally new, like if I've never touched Firebase before and I see a pull request that integrates our app with Firebase, I'm going to be super stoked on that because it's a chance for me to learn something totally new. And I can have a conversation with the submitter to kind of ask, what's going on with this, or how do we handle this case? It's just a good way to establish a channel of learning between you and your teammate. Something that we don't want to do in code reviews is catch bugs. It's actually really hard to catch bugs in code review as a reviewer. The main reason is that we don't really have the full context picture of what's going on. We only have what's going on with this small change. We don't have the entire application in mind when we're looking at this code review. You might maybe, but in this case, your job isn't really to catch bugs, really. You know, there's a whole QA process. Tests are for this, unit tests, integration tests, which are kind of meant for that. But as a reviewer, catching bugs shouldn't be your main concern. Enforcing coding standards. So for the most part, we don't really want to police code standards in pull requests. I feel it's not very helpful, honestly. If I submit a big pull request and people are commenting that like you should use 2 spaces here instead of a tab, that's not helping anybody really, in my opinion. Some companies do have coding standards and they have documentation for that, and most of the time that coding standards is taken care of pre-commit. There are linters that run before you commit, which format the code exactly the way you need it, the way your company wants it. And it's something that shouldn't really be addressed in pull requests, right? The purpose of a pull request is to add functionality to an existing application, share knowledge, and just get eyes on it. And it's not really that big of a deal. Yeah, like Stacey said, there's linters in place for this project, so don't worry about code standards in this place. Cool. So what makes a good pull request? Start by asking questions. If you haven't seen something new before, if you haven't seen this like Firebase, for instance, don't be afraid to ask a question in the code, in the pull request. It's a great way for you to learn something and for the reviewer to kind of enforce kind of what they know and grow stronger in what they've actually worked on. Annotate your code to orient your reviewer. This is kind of explanatory in the terms of you want to write good code enough that it's kind of self-documenting in a way. You could either do that with comments, or your code could be named well. So that means, writing good function names, good variable names, not just const a equals this thing I'm trying to do. Make your variables and your functions and everything kind of important to what you're working on. And then as a reviewer, if you've actually learned something new, kind of let the owner know that you learned something new and this was awesome. I know when I've submitted pull requests and I see people comment something that like, oh, I didn't know I could do this, or this is a really cool way to do that. As a developer, that makes me feel really good about what I worked on, and it makes me just excited to be able to contribute. Something I wanted to show off as well. I just wanted to show off like an example pull request too from what I work on. And then we can go into this further reading. So here's an example pull request of comments that I think are really helpful. At my company, we like to prefix our messages with kind of categories. Like a worth considering is like, it doesn't need to happen, but it's something to consider. I find these comments super helpful because it just gives me new knowledge on how to do things in a potentially better way. Another worth considering here. Again, these comments are very, very helpful. And I love these comments too. If you see something cool, let the owner know that, hey, this is awesome. We should keep doing this. It just makes you feel better. So going back to this, there's a lot of good documentation on code reviews. Every company has a good way, has good documentation on, what makes a good code review. So we can share these links in the Slack. And yeah, any questions on like code reviews as the owner or the reviewer?
I personally am really bad at code reviews and very scared of them still always. And so I love the idea of just asking a question. Like if you look at a code review and you don't have anything to say about it, or like if you look at a PR and you're like, I don't know what to say, like find something and just ask a question about it, even if it's like, can you tell me more about this?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a good way to, you know, as you as a reviewer to get knowledge, and as the owner to kind of practice, you know, what they implemented and get better at you know, what they did.
How did you all feel about code reviews this week? Like, what was your experience like this week?
I probably agree with you, Stacey. I didn't really know what to say. I thought it was good work, but yeah, I think that's a good thing. Tell me more, or yeah, just clarification on things. I think that's a good bit of advice, because you still want to like, you know, say well done, but show an interest in what they're doing as well. So.
And then like as a reviewer and a submitter, it gets easier as you go. You know, the more pull requests you do, the easier it gets from both sides. So it may feel awkward at first, but you know, it's a muscle. So the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So don't feel worried if it feels weird right now.
Joey or Lauren, when you're doing your code reviews, what's your process usually like? Like, you open up a PR and then what?
You mean for specifically for this? Like, what did I do for these?
In general, like, what's your general?
So usually I will like look at the acceptance criteria and see, pull up the app and make sure that those were met. And then I just, in GitHub, I will pull up and like compare the changes side by side, and look for like the team that I was working with used really great semantic HTML. Like, I on purpose look for things to say nice things about, because I know what it feels like being on the other end of a code review, and it's always nice to be like, oh, fantastic. And then just what Joey was saying too, I think that's really helped me be better at code reviews, is not be afraid to ask questions. Like, there are a gazillion things to know and nobody knows everything. So use it as an opportunity to like learn something for yourself. What else? Like, if there's knowledge that I can share, I will share that. Like, oh, you know, I just learned such and such a thing. This might make that easier. This might make that a little bit easier. Like, that's kind of nice. And it's good practice for you to share things that you might know. Yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, pretty much echoing what Lauren said. You know, making sure the acceptance criteria is met from the code that we're reviewing. Looking for things, you know, to give thumbs up for, you know, to praise. And then if I have any knowledge too about a process, you know, I'd like to share that where it's applicable. And yeah, I mean, in like a production environment, you know, at my office, you know, I always look for tests. If a pull request doesn't have tests, I usually don't approve it. So I usually ask, you know, is this code easily testable? And then that usually the answer is either yes, it is, and so they need to add tests, or no, it's not. So we probably need to revisit that. But yeah, that's kind of the same process as Lauren.
Cool. So for like collab lab purposes, it sounds like pull down the other person's branch, test the acceptance criteria, review the code, leave compliments, ask questions, share knowledge.
Nailed it.
Anybody else have like things they want to talk about their experience code reviewing this week?
I just really liked it, I think because it's like, it's almost like a note-taking thing, and like, because eventually I can go back and be like, oh yeah, what was that thing with use effect? It broke everything. And then like, or like, how do I re-render if I click a button? Oh, Lauren mentioned use effect. So it's like, you can always go back to the old pull requests, and like all the things you learned are all there because everyone already commented in the code. So I'm forgetful. I know some people like to like use like bug Bibles and stuff like that, like where they like keep a log of all the bugs that they use, but this is kind of like another set of that, so you can always have like a record of all the stuff you have
I do that all the time. I look at old pull requests all the time. I'm like, what was that ticket? Oh yeah, that's where we did that one thing. Yep, all the time.
Like, if you're looking at code in the future, like way down the line, GitHub gives you a lot of really cool options to like go back to see when things were changed, and if that person who changed it has done a really beautiful commit message, or pull requests, then you can get a better idea of like where their head was at and why they did things a certain way. So it can help your team move like harder and faster together. Anybody else want to share?
I mean, for me, the first pull request was awkward, just because I didn't know Firebase. So it was just kind of like, yeah, maybe I could have definitely asked more questions now that, you know, I've listened to the mentors say these things. But yeah, for me, it was cool to learn about something new, but I definitely like didn't understand the context, and I was like, it looks good, like, but yeah.
That's pretty much the same thing for me. I've never done one of those, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of new, and didn't really know what to say other than looks clean, looks like it's gonna work. Okay, let's learn about this stuff. So
so, and like, I did a terrible job looking at the PRs this week, I'll admit it. Going forward too, if there are brand new things that you think other people like aren't going to have any idea about, try and include like the documentation in your pull request so that they have somewhere they can go to learn more before they even dig into your code. So they're reading through your description and they're like, oh, this is on Firebase. Okay, I should probably like read through this high level, even if it's like not necessarily the documentation, but like an article that you found that was really helpful to the way that you implemented it or something. That can be just any resources to help your team grow and learn are perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Can I just say one thing? In a professional setting, like pull requests, some teams take the approach that if you are reviewing somebody else's code, that you are just as responsible as the person who wrote the code for any problems that happen in production or those kind of things. So, you know, like, you see something new that you don't know anything about, like on a professional software team where you have more time and that kind of thing. So, you might like actually need to kind of dig in, learn the thing, like kind of think about the implementation. Like there's, code reviews can be costly in the sense of like they could take a lot of time and effort to actually do a really good code review. Like in this setting, you have kind of backup here. Like the mentors can kind of do some of the more technical stuff if if it's a totally brand new concept and that kind of thing. But it's at a minimum, yeah, like the things you're talking about, like pulling code down and running it, seeing if there are errors in the console. If there are tests, run the tests. Those kinds of things are a good first step. So
yeah,
just kind of want to mention that.
Kind of echoing to what Andrew said, in a professional setting with code reviews, a good way to think about it is, it's cheaper for a company side to spend time to catch the bug in the code review rather than if it's in production. Production goes down, you lose potential revenue. So, getting good at code reviews is such a good skill. So
yeah,
we have a good space to practice that.
Yeah. To play off that too, leads me to something that's very important for Collab Lab. Code reviews do take a lot of time. And because we go through two completely separate cycles of code reviews, like your other pair goes through it and they have to learn and dig in and test everything. And then once they approve it, your mentors have to do the same thing too. So I was like being a little bit pushy in the channel about like, get these PRs in, but this is just like a good example of a reason why it's so important for us to get the like bulk coding done very early in the week, because this code review process takes just as long, if not sometimes longer, because now you're having to like coordinate schedules and other people are relying on you. So like, because of this type of teamwork, it's important to like get those in early so that we can make sure we're, going through a good feedback process and getting everything in place so that when we come to this sync on Sundays, it's not like, oh, here's a bunch of like other things that we notice, like go fix those. Oh, and you have your whole next week's work too. It'll give us like a cleaner break if we can get those PRs in by like Wednesday or Thursday. So we have time to go through that cycle. Cool. Okay. Any last questions on any of this stuff? Good. Okay. Well, then in that case, let's take a quick look. I didn't think about sharing my screen, but I suppose I could share my screen just to show you where I'm finding things. Share. Actually, let me move. I'll just share my big screen with you. Sorry. It might be kind of small. Okay. So there is, in Slack right now, we have this week's pairs, Aisling, Diane, John, Jennifer, and then each of you have a thread here where you can thread your communication for the week. We're meeting on, XYZ. Here's a resource that we found. Here's our progress, blah, blah, blah. so that you can have it all in one place so that it's easier for you to go back and find things instead of scattering them throughout the channel. So we also need to go into see what the issues for the week are. I don't have any of this pulled up. I'm so sorry. Was not expecting to do this. Okay. Nope, wrong place. Projects. And I'm going to open up the project. Going to see how things are cleared up. How's this ticket here? Is this still review in progress, or has this been approved?
It's been merged. It's been merged.
I'm going to go ahead and move it over here now, but next week before the sync, just pop in and make sure this is all cleaned up. Okay, so the next two issues are number 3. As a user, I want to set up a new shopping list so I can track purchased items. And issue number 4 is, as the user, I want to add a new item to a shopping list. So that being said, anybody see something they definitely want to snag?
If there's something that has to do with Firebase, I'd like to look into that.
Both of these
Yeah.
have to do with Firebase.
Oh, well, well then any of them.
Cool. Okay. Well, if nobody has any last chance, or I'm going to assign them.
I would say number 4 if it's available. I would prefer that one as against number 3.
Number 4, okay.
I don't know if that is Firebase related.
As a user, I want to add a new item. Yep. So you'll be adding items and they'll be hitting Firestore. They'll be.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. Okay.
Good with me.
Okay.
Go ahead and actually, I'll let you assign this. Go ahead and pop into the project and assign that one to yourself. And then John and Jennifer, you'll take number 3.
Sounds good.
Okay, and we'll do some breakout rooms. Joey, Lauren, any specific one that you want to go with? Okay, Joey, I'm going to put you with the other J's. You'll go with Jennifer and John.
Okay, cool.
And you can go with the other crew. Let me stop my screen share and figure out how to do breakout rooms. Here's
Yeah. They're
automatic.
No, you probably want, you can assign them manually.
Oh, okay.
You can kind of build them up, like you kind of put people in the rooms, and you can.
Oh, look at this. Now I don't know how to do it. Okay, Andrew. Wow, this is like, I'm really bad at this. Give me just a minute. I think I clicked button wrong, so I'm having to redo it all. Move to 2. Ashling 2. J. Okay, here we go. Ready?
Let's go.
I think I did it. Did you all get a notification? Okay, cool. Oh, I don't get to go into one. Oh, join number 2. Yes.
Those tools work.
Yeah.
Good job, Stacey.
Hi.
I was just saying that's like the hardest part about working remotely, honestly.
Can you see
I mean,
my
it's the scariest part for me.
Seriously. Making sure all the right windows are showing.
Oh my gosh.
See them. You're not muted. You should be. Anyway, okay.
All right. So let's see. What is our team doing? We're doing add an item. Is that right?
Yeah, the number 4.
Okay. Cool. So I think number 1, we want to make sure everybody can pull down master, right? Oh, Ashley, you're having problems with
Node? Yeah. We just tried to work through it, and certain things were coming up as an error. I haven't got a chance to look at it since. We were just working on it yesterday. So that would be my top priority. So I can actually commit things.
Sure. So maybe after this, you and I can just have like a quick Zoom and see if I can help you. Does that sound good?
I would appreciate that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. Why don't we do that? And then, so Diane has like a lot of experience with that too. So she'll be sympathetic ear for you.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, I need that.
For sure. I had systems error at the beginning too, but Lauren helped me build my confidence to just delete stuff on my system and reboot. And yeah, it was great.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like, especially at the beginning of a project, to be honest, just blow it away. Start fresh. And see what happens. I mean, there are other things that you can do, but sometimes it might be just the fastest to just toss it out and start again. Okay, So Diane, why don't you don't have to share your screen or anything, but why don't you pull down master? And then if you haven't already, have you done that already?
Yeah. I've tested. Yeah, I have master.
Okay. And then did you install the new things? Because I think
npm installed the Firebase, like the
whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I ran production, so everything's working good.
Everything's good. Okay. Then why don't you go ahead and create a new branch?
Okay. Oh shit! It's still running. Check out DKAS, and then what is this called?
AH.
Oh, H. Sorry.
Yeah.
AH. And what are we calling this? As usual, I want to add new item. Add item.
Sure. Add new item. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Add new item.
It's okay too for those to be like a little bit verbose. Like sometimes you'll write out a really long one and you'll be like, this might be a little much, but it's really helpful to like, if you are working on a bigger team and you have like something very specific you're working on where there might be like 5 other people working on something similar to like, you'll probably have like Jira ticket numbers and stuff when you're actually like on a team, but.
Oh yeah. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. So yeah, dk-ah-add new item.
Okay. Okay. And then you're and then you'll push. Are you pushing it up? Did you push it up?
Do I just do git switch to a new branch? Just like git push origin dk that?
So it can tell you. So if you do git add, git commit, and then if you just type git push, it will tell you that you maybe need to add some more things in your command. You can also look at the README, or not the README, but the project brief, I think, has instructions, pretty specific instructions on how to do it.
Can I ask a quick question? Maybe this is kind of naive of me. I assume Diane is doing it in her coding editor. What's the value of doing it in the coding editor as against like Git desktop or actually creating one on GitHub on your browser? This is a matter of interest.
Let's see. You can use GitHub desktop. That's fine. I think that I've never created a branch like in
honestly, like for this purpose, like since you're just like creating it with nothing in it and you both want to pull it down, if you create it from the browser, like in GitHub, then you don't have to worry about like creating it, pushing it, pulling it. You can just create it there at the highest level and both pull it down. But other than that, like all of the mechanics of everything that you're doing is the same, no matter where you're doing it. It just depends on where you like to do your work, kind of. So whatever tool you're more comfortable with. Some people aren't comfortable in their terminal, and you know, maybe the GUI for GitHub is a little bit better for you. So just whatever.
Okay.
I think I think through GitHub it was, well, I mean, it's obviously more like straightforward, and I think I used it once with another team just because it had become super complicated with our Git merges, and we were just like, okay guys, we're just starting a new branch, let's go from GitHub and we just all pull it down rather than like, but
just a question.
That's the only time I've used it.
That was a great question.
And definitely like what Stacey said, use whatever tool is comfortable for you, because you'll find that on developer teams too, like different people use different things for sure. Some people just feel more comfortable.
Definitely that. And like whatever tool you get to learn and you get comfortable with, it's going to teach you things about all the other tools. So as you watch other people navigate through their code, you're like, oh, like it's all clicking. This is how I do it. And it starts to become less like this big, scary, daunting world of dev and more like, oh, we're all kind of doing the same thing, just in a million different ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So just while that, I was able to push it upstream, and I just checked through GitHub in the branches and it's created. So I think you could be able to pull it.
Yep, I see it for sure.
Sweet.
Cool. And then Stacy, remind me, what else do we want to make sure that we cover?
Awesome. So I think like if we can just jump into that actual GitHub issue and just talk through like what maybe the approach would be, maybe where there's knowledge gaps or where you might need help or what even the next step is.
Yep. All right. I can share my screen. One moment. That is the right desktop. And let me pull up the project. And here, if I double click that, can I make this big? Yeah, that would be better. Okay. As a user, I want to add a new item to my shopping list. So a shopping list item consists of the following data points. So each item, think of it as it having a name, and then it's going to have another field that refers to how soon you're likely to buy it again. And let's see. So there's some more information in the acceptance criteria, but soon means within the next 7 days. Kind of soon refers to in the next 14 days. Not soon in the next 30 days, and then the last purchase date. So for the acceptance criteria, the user is presented with a form, and so this will be from, what pages do we have so far? Remind me. We have the shopping list, and then we have the add an item, right? So this will be on the add item page.
Okay.
You'll have a form that allows them to enter the name of the item and then to select how soon they anticipate needing to buy it again with those 3 options: soon, kind of soon, not soon. So be thinking about like, what's that form gonna look like? What kinds of form fields do you need for the form? And then when the user submits the form, probably through a button or something, right? That's pretty typical. The item is saved to the database associated with the user's token. And I'm pretty sure that the other team is working on the user token. So this might be like a really important thing to kind of have cross-team collaboration. So that's going to complicate. That's probably going to be one of the bigger challenges, I think, with this issue is like that cross-team collaboration, not just collaboration between the 2 of you. I foresee that being like one of the challenges to overcome. Okay, along with the item name, an integer corresponding to the estimated number of days until next purchase is saved. So, you know, the user will choose soon, kind of soon, or not soon, but that's going to be represented by the integer 7 or 14 or 30. And then the last purchase date should be set to null initially, right? Because they're just adding it to their list for the first time, so they haven't actually purchased it. You can create an item, i.e. you can create an item without purchasing it. So what questions maybe are coming up about those criteria? Because it seems like we're not doing like the purchase part of it yet, right? Like saying I purchased this item. It's just being able to add that item.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a good one that'll challenge you to really stick to like the bare minimum of the acceptance criteria. Because it's easy to get like, oh, I've got all these other things I want to add to it.
Okay.
Here's a question for you that could help you think about this. When you're looking at this issue and you know that you're going to have to collaborate with the other pair at some point, what are the things that you can do completely without them? What things can you put in as placeholders so you don't necessarily need them? What do you need from them? Like if you were to go ask them like, hey, how have you done this? When is this done? What is that? And how are you going to plug that thing into what you're doing? So I think that's kind of like a thought process of like how you can kind of time your week. Like start with the stuff that you can completely do on your own with no help. Then keep in touch with them about their progress. And when they've done the thing they need to do, plug it in and make sure yours is ready for that to be plugged in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm already thinking like how they're gonna create their data object for the shopping list and the token, how they're gonna put that in, because we'll need to verify, like basically if they're adding an item, we have to verify whether shopping list already exists. And if not, like, I guess we can create a dummy shopping list.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can totally just pop into Firebase and create what you need to build your thing. And then also, I'm sure you're taking notes like on the issue, but I would put these notes on this actual issue. It sounds like you also want to kind of collaborate with them and ask them how they're going to set up their collections in the database. So that you can kind of make sure you're setting up the same way, whether you're like, you know, like nesting these other documents and existing collections, or if you're just providing like references to other collections, you know, via document IDs or something. Just kind of getting on the same page about that data structure could be a good first step too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that really mimics like experience on a developer team. So a lot of times we're developing as the front end team, we're developing features in tandem with the API team, the people that are building the endpoints on the back end. And so like, it's really important to understand, like if they're not done yet, you can still get started, but just understand what that data structure is going to look like, and just to be able to have dummy data, right? To have things as placeholders, and then when they're done, you can plug that stuff in.
Totally. And so for like, I heard you say like, check to see if the list exists or something. So I'll just warn you, try and keep it in scope. Like if that's not necessarily part of the scope, that whole checking, that could like extend this quite a bit and creep like wildly. So if you can think of a way to do this so that when you're adding these items, you don't have to go check to see if a list exists. You can just be adding them to a list with a token, and then when that list is rendered, that's what does the checking to see what items are associated with this list.
Okay. Okay.
So on this one, you want to include that token somehow, but you don't necessarily need to do anything with it. You just want to make sure it's there and being stored in the database.
Right. And then once we collaborate with the other team and see how they're adding their token, we can just plug
figure
it
out
into
where
our
to get
team.
it from. Yeah, you'll want to figure out where to get it so that you can make sure you're sending it along with the new item.
Right. Okay. I think I get it.
Yeah,
like your next step for like, even if it's just like preparing or taking notes or digging more, what's next for you?
I'd say, well, for me, going into Firebase and maybe creating that dummy shopping list already, and then going into the add-in, we can create a form that should be doable, and then we'll figure out what the input fields are later on.
Awesome.
Yeah, the creating a form is quite new to me, so that's there. I'd probably have to do a bit of homework on, definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this sounds great. I would like write up in the notes where each of you are at, like thinking about this and what might be next for you, so that you can kind of figure out when is a good time to pair once you're kind of like ready to take on some coding and, you know, discuss. You can talk back and forth in that thread that's in Slack about things you're learning or what you might need to figure out. And yeah, any other questions? I know Lauren's gonna help get that node module stuff fixed, or NPM, whatever you guys are working on.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. In that case, if there's nothing else, I'm gonna do something with these breakout rooms. Oh, I shouldn't close them. Oh, everybody.
Can I just stay in it, or can we not? Do you know?
You can totally stay in this. Let me stop recording.
Oh, yeah.
This is still recording.
Okay.